What is happening? What is happening? What is happening, y'all? It is me coming back at you again with another live stream vid. Oh, we definitely got to talk about this one. We got to talk about a list of topics here that I have laid out. So I just want to give a shout out to everyone out there who's having a lovely weekend. Definitely some interesting week of boxing, which we're gonna weekend of boxing that we definitely going to have to go over. Yeah. So forgive me here that I'm only covering the a couple of fights that was on the Queensberry card. I didn't get a chance to watch the Matchroom card. I think the only intriguing fight that I was looking forward to on that card was Terry Harper versus Hannah Rakin. I really honestly don't know the results to that, but I'll definitely check it out and see. And probably do a separate video or live stream tomorrow on that. On not only that fight, but maybe on the entire Matchroom card that I didn't get a chance to watch today. So forgive me, it was a pretty busy day, Saturday for me. So first things first, got to give a shout out to the combatants in the Joe Joyce and the Joseph Parker fight. Good heavyweight fight, but at the end of the day, it was a it was a one-sided beatdown destruction. And what I'm referring to is that the fact that Joe Joyce destroyed, I mean, literally destroyed Joseph Parker, beat him up from the first round to the stoppage, which was in the 11th round. Well, actually, it wasn't much of a stoppage; it was a knockout. It was a bad knockout. But before I get into that, let me just go ahead and then break this fight down piece by piece from an analytical standpoint. Um, Going into the fight, in case some of you may not have been made aware, the weigh-ins was kind of intriguing. And the reason why I say that is because Joe Joyce came in at 271 and a half. That is the heaviest of his career. I think his previous heaviest was probably around 270, so it wasn't that much of a difference. But typically he usually comes in into fights around the 260 range. I would say 264, 265, something around there. But he did gain an extra 5 pounds for this particular fight, but he is 1 pound over his career highest. Now, as far as Joseph Parker is concerned, he came in at a whopping 255. Now, that right there was surprising to me. And the reason why I believe that he came in at that particular weight is because I guess he was getting advice from Tyson Fury leading up to the during the training camps. And the reason why I say that is because Tyson Fury has sparred with Joe Joyce on many occasions. He's even sparred with him for the first Wilder fight. I believe the second Wilder fight as well. So Joe Joyce has come in and helped out in those training camps for those two fights. But so he knows him very well, and he probably got got word that Joe Joyce was going to plan not only apply his relentless pressure, which we all know that's what he does, but he's going to plan to use his weight against him in the clinches, which is exactly happened today or tonight in the ring. So, like Deontay Wilder did in the third Fury fight, they wanted to put on some mass so that way they can deal with that onslaught and deal with the pressure, in the clinches from Joe Joyce. Now, as I said, and I had a conversation with some people in our private chats, Ahmed, and then of course with EJ on another chat. I will say that that right there was very detrimental. And the reason why I say it was detrimental to Joseph Parker is because Joseph Parker is known to have cardio issues, even at his best optimal weight at 235 ish, 240s, maybe mid 240s is optimal weight. But anything above that, around especially 255, he's going to gas out quickly. The reason why I say that is because Joe Joyce makes you waste your shots and he pressures you relentlessly, and it's meant not only physically draining, but it's also mentally draining as well, because you hit this guy with your best shots and he just shrugs it off like it's nothing. He keeps coming at you, and not only he's coming at you, he's hurting you with some body shots, he's hurting you with his jab, and they do look slow, and obviously it looks like he doesn't put much power into it, but it seems like it doesn't matter. Joe Joyce doesn't have to load up to hurt you, and that's what's scary about him. And the fact is that he doesn't let you breathe when when you try to punch or get out of the way against him. It's like Joe Joyce just doesn't let you breathe. He doesn't give you a chance to reset to throw your combinations. And that's exactly what he did to Joseph Parker. Not only he physically drained him, but he mentally drained him as well. In the process, I will say this. Let me break this fight down. So first round, it was a bit cagey. I edged it to I edged to Joe Joyce. I believe, yeah, I think he won that round. The second round, I gave to Parker. I gave him, I think he did a little bit of better work in that round. But then the third round and beyond, man, it was pretty much Joe Joyce, man. That third round, was a telling round to me, and I think was the changing course of that fight. Is that Joseph Parker already looked like he was exhausted in that round. He looked like he was gone and ready for the taking at that time. And there was many moments he was ready for the taking before he got knocked out. But and I think again, it goes to the fact the reason why he was tired and he was already exhausted because of the extra weight that he's not accustomed to carrying into fights. And number two is that he's not used to a guy who's going to apply a relentless pressure. I know people are going to bring up Darius Azora, but that's two different situations. All right, because Derek Azora doesn't have fast feet. Number one, number two, he's not the type of guy who's going to and his work rate is not as high as Joe Joyce. That's another thing. It's just that Joseph Parker is not really used to a guy who's bigger than him, who's stronger than him, who can do things like that to him. He's not used to that. So that's why I'm wondering, I think it was Tyson Fury. If Tyson Fury advised him to come in at 255, to come in as heavy as he's ever been, then Tyson Fury doesn't need to be in Joseph Parker's camp anymore, because that was one of the worst advices you could give him going into that fight. What's up, Tony? What's good, man? Yeah, what's good? Yeah, so that's one of the worst advice you can give him, to tell him to go in at 255 against Joe Joyce, knowing that he has stamina cardio issues in prior fights. I think that was a telltale sign for me, especially in that third round when he looked like he was already gone, because he's not used to wasting shots earlier than he's accustomed to. That's exactly what happened. And to be fair, Joseph Parker did land some good shots on Joe Joyce, something that would have gained some other heavyweights respect, or perhaps hurt them. But Joe Joyce wasn't going anywhere. It's like he kept shrugging them off. It kept coming at him. Now, I would say one thing. I think it was the 8th or 9th round when Joseph Parker started to build back some momentum. And the one thing I would say, though, is that when Joseph Parker threw his combinations and he would land, then immediately Joe Joyce would start throwing some combinations himself. He'll start countering with some body shots. And the thing about Joe Joyce is that he's very sneaky with those body shots. I mean, you just don't know when he's going to throw them. And the thing about him, he's a very awkward heavyweight. It kind of reminds me of George Foreman. George Foreman, yeah, he's known to be sloppy and throw some wild winging shots, but he's very deceptive, because sometimes you will believe he's going to throw those windmill shots, but sometimes he'll be winging body shots out of nowhere. So I think that's what I saw. That's what I think about Joe Joyce. It's just like Joseph Parker. He just wouldn't let him breathe in that fight. And that right there was a telltale sign for me. Once again, I have to repeat. But anyhow, the fight ended with a 11th round knockout when Joe Joyce landed a crunching left hook that caught Joseph Parker on the chin, or on the side of the head, and he was gone. He was out before he landed. Let's be honest. He was out before he landed on the canvas, all right? And another thing I have to point out is that Joseph Parker suffered a huge cut on his eye. His face was getting busted up, his right eye, that is. He suffered a huge cut on his right eye, and his left eye closed as well. And his body, he took a lot of body shots, some crunching body shots. Yeah, that man is going to be spending the next 2-3 days in the hospital, because that was a terrible beating that he absorbed. And the thing about it is too, Tyson Fury and John Fury, the Furies were in the, they were in the front rows cheering Joseph on. But I should have captured this, but I actually find that screenshot somewhere. There was an image when Joe Joyce landed that huge left hook on Joseph Parker to end the fight. There was a look of grimace and disappointment on Tyson Fury, and the Furies by that matter, because at that point they knew that fight was lost by their guy Joseph Parker. And furthermore, Tyson Fury didn't even bother going to the ring to check on Joseph. Now, some people are going to say, well, he doesn't have to do that. I'm like, yeah, I get it, but if you're a good friend of his, you would like to go check on him to make sure he's okay. Now, if Tyson Fury actually did that, then please let me know. And it'd be intriguing to find out if he actually has gone to the hospital with Joseph Parker, because as we all recalled, he didn't bother going to the hospital or check on his buddy his prior best buddy, Billy Joe Saunders. And we all know those two fell out. And the reason was probably in part because Tyson Fury took off and left the scene, instead of going to the hospital with Billy Joe Saunders when he suffered his injuries at the hands of Canelo Alvarez. He decided to get on a plane to Miami and party. It didn't even bother, helping his father out when his father was getting attacked by security in Dallas a couple years ago. So, in this case, did Tyson Fury go to the hospital with Joseph Parker? If he didn't, then maybe this is a lesson to be learned for Joseph Parker. Because sometimes when you got a snake like Tyson Fury, now you realize he's not your best buddy, because he didn't bother checking on you when you took that beating. He didn't bother going to the hospital. Instead, he decides he wants to go party, go do some other things. I know Tyson Fury is going to come up with an excuse that I had something prior planned before the fight, so I had to attend that. But at the end of the day, you are Tyson Fury. You could cancel that whatever prior engagement you have just to be with your close buddy, and by his side going to the hospital. But if he did, please somebody let me know if he actually went to the hospital with Joseph Parker. Please let me know if he actually did. Because if he did, I'll retract what my comments about Tyson Fury being a snake and a two-face when it comes to situations like that. Because we saw that with Billy Joe Saunders, and we've probably seen this again with Joseph Parker, when whatnot. So now, great performance by Joe Joyce. As far as how I scored the fight, I only gave Joseph Parker maybe 2 rounds. If I had rewatched and rescored the fight again, maybe 3 at best. But on all the other Georgia scorecards, I think one judge had him up by 4 points, another judge had him up by 3 points, and then the third judge had Joyce up by 2 points. Now, the 2 points one, that's a little bit way too close for my liking, but it is what it is. All 3 judges had the rightful fighter up before the stoppage or the knockout. But anyways, I was talking to EJ in a private chat along with the other guys. Like, shout out to EJ and Roy and Wesley and YG. I was telling them that it's going to be a moment in time before Joyce stops Parker, because especially in that 4th and 5th round, he was taking way too much punishment. Couldn't even deal with the onslaught and the pressure from Joyce at all. Especially if this guy's taking your best punches, he keeps coming at you. The one thing I'm surprised about before the stoppage, before the knockout, is that Joe Joyce showed a little bit of head movement. I think it was in the 9th round when Joseph Parker tried to come back with a barrage of punches. And I think some would argue that maybe Joe Joyce did feel the power of those shots, so that's why he felt that he had to be more defensively responsible. So I can take that argument. But I also would say too is that he was getting caught numerous of times against Joseph Parker in this fight. That was due to the fact that he kept lunging in whenever he threw his right or his jabs or the hooks to the body. But the one thing he did learn, he did make a small adjustment where he did made an adjustment by not overcommitting when he threw his shots. Rather, he threw touching shots, got out of the way before Joseph Parker could counter him. So that was one good adjustment he made. He also started to show some head movement in the later rounds, as I mentioned, when he started to feel the sting of Parker's shots. So that right there is surprising. Joe Joyce showing some head movement. So that's surprising. But another thing I was surprised about is that, the 10th and the 11th round, Joe Joyce started to show some hand speed. So, he started to throw some like 5-punch, 3-4-punch combinations. And that right there shocked the hell out of me, because the last time he did that was back in his amateur days when he had faster hands. Obviously, he was a lot lighter weight-wise, but he started to show some hand speed in the later rounds before the stoppage. And I think that itself surprised Joseph Parker, because he didn't probably expect that to happen. And another thing, too, about Joseph Parker is that Andy Lee probably gave him the worst instructions that he could ever give him when he was taking a beating like that. Andy Lee told him that in between breaks is that, look, you need to keep the jab, you need to keep jabbing him, getting out the way, a jab, and that's it. Nah, man. What you need to do, I mean, that probably sounds ideal, but the guy, you see that the guy can't get away from him. So the only thing you can do is that when you fight a fighter that has, is applying relentless pressure on you, especially a fighter who's got faster feet, who's got better work rate, has got a better engine than you, and he's beating you the fuck up throughout the fight, you're going to have to take the fight to him. There's no other way. There's no other way. And that's just my opinion. There's no other way to beat Joe Joyce. You have to apply the pressure on him to keep him off of you. And if you have faster feet like Alexander Usyk, who can fight you at different angles, then that's the only style that I see beating Joe Joyce. Oh, by the way, Usyk already beat Joyce several years ago in the WSB. Yes, Joe Joyce got better over the years. Yeah, so did Alexander Usyk. So Usyk is the only guy I see beating him. Now, Tyson Fury, maybe, but I'm not too confident of Tyson Fury beating Joe Joyce. No way. I am not confident at all. In fact, I don't think Tyson Fury will want to go in there against Joe Joyce after that performance. After see what he was able to do, in fact, to make minor adjustments in during the course of that fight. Yeah, I don't think Joe Joyce. I mean, not Joe. I don't think Tyson Fury want to go near that guy. No way. Now, if anybody thinks that Joe Joyce could beat Tyson Fury at this moment, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. I don't blame you for believing that, because that is a high probability. I know styles make fights. I know Tyson Fury is a better fighter than Joseph Parker, but Tyson Fury is not a volume puncher. He doesn't throw, in many combinations, and he's not known to have a high work rate. I'm not saying he doesn't have a low work rate, but he doesn't really have a a high work rate to keep a guy like Joe Joyce off of him. Only Alexander Usyk can do that at all. Now, the one thing Tyson Fury does have working for him to his advantage is that he does have a slight height. It's slight. I think the reach is about the same between the two. But the thing is that he's never been pushed like that in a fight before. So I don't think Fury's going to go near Joe Joyce. I really don't think he wants to. In fact, why not set that fight up for December? I do not want to see Tyson Fury fighting fucking Manuel Char. Forgive me for cursing on the live stream, guys, but that's just I'm speaking from the heart. He should not be fighting no Manuel Char. He should be fighting no guy who's ranked 62, 63 in the world. Shout out to Kevin Larena, by the way, because he's the heavyweight prospect, South American heavyweight, who called out Tyson Fury for that crap, saying you can't call yourself the best heavyweight in the world when you're fighting a guy who's ranked 60, 62, 63. You can't do that. Fight some guys in the top 15, top 20. I don't care, but don't fight Manuel Char at all. All right. Fight Joe Joyce. I mean, Joe Joyce didn't look like he took any damage in that fight against Joseph Parker. I don't think he's taking any injuries. Why not fight Joe Joyce? Put him in there against Tyson Fury for December date. Of course, Frank Warren's not going to want to set that up, because now Frank Warren's talking about we should keep Joyce out for a year till the Usyk fight comes up. Wait a minute. Why aren't you guys setting up the fight? Shouldn't you guys be talking about Usyk versus Fury? Because that's a fight we really want to see. But now it seems to me that Frank Warren is planning to put a roadblock in front of Alexander Usyk for him to get to Fury, and that's Joe Joyce. That's what it seemed like to me based off that post-fight interview that Frank Warren gave. So, yeah, I don't like the sound of that. Yes, Joe Joyce did earn the right to become the interim champion tonight. He did. He is now the official mandatory challenger for the WBO. But we shouldn't be talking about Usyk versus Joyce. Yes, I think it's time for us to see that rematch, but I think it can wait. I think Undisputed needs to precede that before that fight takes place. Now, if that fight does take place, then I definitely favor Usyk. Joe Joyce, his resume is looking a lot better, man. He's looking a lot better. The only man to knock out Joseph Parker. Now he's got 2 world champions that he's beat. Bermain Stavern, Joseph Parker. I know Daniel Dubois is a regular champion, but I guess if you want to count that, that's fine. So make it 3 champions. He beat 3 world champions, and one of them in his prime, and Daniel Dubois. Joseph Parker. I mean, I guess he's still at peak form, but other than that, that's still a great win. So now his resume is looking solid, boy. And he's done that in 15 pro fights. Credit to Brian Jenkins. He's the only man to go the distance against Joe Joyce. In fact, he's the only man to hurt Joe Joyce, and that was through body shots. So, yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah, I'll send you a link, comment. Yeah, give me a minute. Give me a moment. So, yeah, I think that's yeah. Yeah, I can't be more proud of Joe Joyce. That was a damn good performance, man. Okay, all right, 20 minutes. That sounds good. Yeah, what's up, MG? He says that great fight between Joyce and Parker. Yeah, it was a great fight, but obviously it was a great fight. Parker definitely had his moments, but he was taking a beating throughout that fight, man. If you ask me personally, I thought that fight should have been stopped, or Parker's corner should have stopped that fight probably the 6th or 7th round, because he literally didn't have nothing left. Yes, he did start to show some bit of spurts of a second resurgence, but obviously it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. So yeah, great performance by Joe Joyce. Great performance. Again, I wouldn't mind seeing Usyk versus Joyce, the rematch, because I think it's time for that. But I think it could still take a back seat for Usyk versus Fury, because that's the fight we have to see. I know Fury's trying to do what he can to stay away from Usyk for a while. I know the Fury fanboy is going to come out and say that, oh, well, Usyk's not ready for December, so Fury can't wait. I'm like, well, yeah, he can wait. Why not? Why not? Forgets December. Wait until Usyk is ready to fight in February or January. But nah, I think they're just using this excuse to stall that fight for a little bit longer. In my view, I don't think Fury really wants to fight Usyk. I don't think he wants to. So now that he's seen what Joyce did to his buddy Joseph Parker, quote unquote, I don't think he wants no part of him either. So let's be real. How many rounds did I give Parker? I gave him 2 rounds. The second round, and I think it was the 9th round when he made a comeback. But you can still argue Joyce won that round because Parker was taking it, was hurt early on in that round, taking a beating. Obviously, not just in that round, but throughout. But I gave him those 2 rounds, and that was it. If I rewatch it again, I'll have to rescore that fight. Probably give it 3 rounds at best for Joseph Parker, but no more than that. What up, DGO? What up? So let me see. What up, Mala? Mala says that put Usyk in with Joyce and to put some more wear and tear on Usyk before he fights. Yeah, that's exactly what Frank Warren is trying to do, and I don't appreciate that bull crap. I really don't. Because right now it seems like, again, they're trying to put a roadblock in front of Usyk before he gets to Fury. Now, if Joyce put some damage on him, and he's very capable of doing it. I mean, I know the WSB was very long, was a long time ago, but I think Usyk wins that fight, but he's gonna have more wear and tear coming out of that fight to a point that, okay, now gives Tyson Fury more of a shot of beating him, and I don't appreciate that at all. And somebody need to call out Frank Warren and Tyson Fury for that bullshit if that's what they're planning to do, to stall that fight out a little bit longer so that the WBO can call that mandatory. That's what I think they're going to try to do. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good thing. Another point that you brought up, Mal, is that Joyce actually made, he made 2 adjustments, but the third adjustment he did make is that he changed the trajectory and the variance of the punches rather than keep telegraphing him and throwing straight rights or long looping rights that he's accustomed to. Yes, he threw some of them in the fights, but he changed the variance of those punches, which is very impressive to me. So yeah. Yeah, MG says that Fury doesn't want any real challenges. I would be surprised if Fury ever fights Joyce. It's a sucker move for Fury to call out Joshua, who just had 2 back-to-back losses. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is a sucker move. I mean, just be real. It is a sucker move because why you want to take on a guy who's coming off back-to-back losses, grueling losses against Usyk, and he's lost 3 of his last 5 fights. In one of those fights, he was stopped. And his confidence is shot. So why you want to fight that guy now? Huh? I don't get that. I know. I mean, again, part of me believes that this is a smokescreen. They're using this as a shield, knowing that maybe that Joshua fight will not happen to where they want to fight Manuel Char. Now, if you're a real Toxic fan, even if you're a Tyson Fury fan, you got to boycott that fight. Fury should not be fighting Manuel Char. And good luck for Queensberry and Frank Warren to sell that fight for a stadium over at the Principality Stadium in Wales. I mean, come on, dude. Is Joyce top 5? Oh yeah, with this win, I think he gets in the top 5. I really think he is. Yeah, or top 4, top 5. Yeah, I was going to say that, Mala. Joyce, he does. His style reminds me of George Foreman. The only thing I think the advantage that he has over Foreman, 2 advantages, is that one, he is slightly technically better than Foreman. Not saying he's better than Foreman, so let's not misquote me now. Obviously, I'm not saying that. We all know he's far away as far as pedigree and the legacy that George Foreman has. But what I'm saying is from a technical standpoint, Joyce is a little bit technically better than Foreman, number 1. Number 2, he actually has faster feet than George Foreman. And his hand speed is quite this. They're quite, pretty much their hand speed is about the same. But the thing is about George Foreman is that George Foreman never had fast feet. He was always slow. Whether to his hand speed, whether to his feet. But he always had that thudding power that got him through fights. Beat up Hall of Famers. So, yeah, I agree with that assessment. He is a modern day George Foreman at this point. Obviously, he's got ways to go to reach the pedigree of Foreman. I mean, if he can pick up a world title, but Yeah, as of now, there are some attributes that does resemble George Foreman out of Joyce. It is. Yeah, he definitely exceeds. He definitely climbs the rankings ahead of Dillian. And some people were talking about Dillian White versus Joyce. I mean, that's suicide if they think about putting Joyce in it. I mean, Dillian there against Joyce. That is suicide. I'm just being honest. Because Dillian, I don't think he'll last 2, 3 rounds with Joyce. I'm just being honest. I don't think he would. Yeah, I agree, Amal. I agree. Definitely Joyce would beat White and Gisor. I mean, both of those fighters are shot right now. Let's be honest, especially Dillian White. He can't even take a punch, let alone an uppercut to save his life. And speaking of uppercuts, I mean, Joyce was throwing some sneaky uppercuts in the clinches, and that right there surprised Parker as well. And one thing I would say, though, too, I forgot to mention, yeah, Joseph showed a lot of heart. He's a warrior. We can't take that away from him. The one thing I would say is that when he had that cut, and that cut was definitely bothering him on his right eye, he kept touching it, and then Joyce will just jump on him as soon as he realized that Joseph Parker would take a reset and take a break and touch his touch his face because of that cut was getting into his eye. Um, Andy Lee should have told him that don't worry about that, man. You got to fight on because when you do something like that, Joyce is going to jump on you, and that's exactly what he did. So, um, yeah, man. So let's talk about this right here. What's next for Joyce? I pretty much jumped into it already. Fury, Usyk, again, my opinion, Frank Warren should set up Fury versus Joyce. If they want to do a stadium fight, and by the way, this was Joyce's first pay-per-view fight, headlining it. So now the UK has another pay-per-view start. Well, that depends if the numbers come in. We'll see what those are like. But Joyce now is becoming one of the biggest draws in the UK, in my view. I'm not saying they sold out the stadium. I think they had a decent crowd, but I think the upper deck they couldn't really sell. But after that win, I think it does increase his stock, obviously. He's starting to become a draw now. That's my opinion. I think the UK, my subscribers and my listeners, I think you guys may beg to differ. But yeah, I think, if you want to fight Joyce, I mean, he's, there's some money, there's some good money to fight him now. You earn a good payday to fight him at this point, especially if he headlined the pay-per-view. So yeah. Yeah, Fury versus Joyce. I think we should see that in December. Why not make that fight, Frank Warren? I advise myself we need to put pressure on the Frank Queensberry to make that fight happen. Why not make that happen? Again, Joyce didn't look like he took any damage in that fight. Yes, he got caught with some shots, but he didn't look like he was injured. So why not? Let's set that fight up. Let's set it up. Usyk, nah, I think we can wait on that until next year. But the one thing I do not want to see is that fight between Usyk and Joyce, the rematch from the WSB days. I don't want to see that fight happen before before Usyk versus Fury, because if that happens, I'm gonna be pissed, and we all know why that fight would happen at that point, because we know Queensberry Fury deliberately stalled that fight long enough for the WBO to call that mandatory. That's exactly what they probably going to plan to do at this point, and I don't like it. So, yeah, Mala says that I really hope that Parker retires. He is financially set. He doesn't need to be be a stepping stone for other heavyweights at the moment. Yeah, you know what? That loss is really going to be a career altering. That beating, I should say, is career altering, man, because Joseph Parker, we all seen he has regressed at some stages, especially the tough fights he had with Dillian, with Joshua. I mean, he didn't really get hurt in the Joshua fight because it was a boring fight. I hate to say that, but the Dillian fight, he took a lot of damage. The first Chisora fight, he took a lot of damage. The Carlos Takam fight, he took some damage. But other than that, man, this right here, the Joyce beating it was horrendous, man. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he retires after this fight, because this was a bad beating. Now, if he comes back, all power to him. But will he be a stepping stone as far as being a gatekeeper for the upcoming heavyweights? I wouldn't go far to say that, but at this point, it probably would not surprise me if that was the case. But if he does retire, then all power to Joseph. I respect him. I like him as a fighter, but the one thing I did not like is the fact that he started to become a Tyson Fury lapdog or a lackey. I just couldn't stand it. I'm sorry. I just did not like that. at all. Let me see. DGO says that Joyce Kazos, White, Ruiz, and Wilder right now. Now, White, definitely. I agree with you on that. Ruiz, I'm not too sure about that. But Wilder, um, it depends on what type of Deontay Wilder we get. Um, if we got the 238 or 240-pound Deontay Wilder, yeah, I agree with you on that one, DGO. But if we get a Deontay Wilder we see right now, prepping for the Hellenius fight, who's quick, who's smooth, who's using, trying to use his, try to use some boxing skills along with his power, who doesn't stand in front of you toe to toe, who's going to give you different angles, then that's going to be a tough fight for Joyce. Now, let's be fair though; it'll also be a very tough fight for Wilder himself. Now, the question is, could that 220 Deontay Wilder or the 215, 225 Deontay Wilder keep up the pace to avoid Joyce's onslaught and relentless pressure? That's very telling. So right now, I probably slightly favor Wilder to win that because obviously, to me, I think it's I'm not saying technically Parker is better, but as far as conditioning is concerned, Wilder at 215, 220, 225 is a better conditioned fighter than Joseph Parker. So that's a fact. Now, if you say that Joyce wins that fight, no problem with that. As far as KOing him, if he's a 238 Wilder, a 240 Wilder, absolutely. But if he's a 215, 225, that's hard to tell right now at this moment. It's hard to say that, but it wouldn't surprise me. Yo, what up, Brotherhood? He said that Parker retired at 30. No. Yeah, I mean, ideally he shouldn't retire, but again, that beating right there can change. It can change your career, man. It can alter your career. Now, again, the heavyweights do have a lot more mileage on their clock than the lower weights. I get that, but if he does decide to retire, then all power to him. I can't really blame him because that was a horrendous beating. That was bad, horrible beating. But I probably will say this though: if he decides to come back, maybe mentally he's going to look at that and say, you know what? I'll probably take a couple fights and that's it. I'm gone because I don't need this. I got a family. My health is intact. I mean, who knows if his health is going to change after that beating, man, because that was horrible. So, I mean, yeah. Bala says, I was surprised he came in at 255. I thought he would come in around 240 to maximize the speed of his stamina to try to win. Yeah, I mean, I was very shocked about that too, Mal. I mentioned that earlier. I think, to me, Tyson Fury or someone got into his ear and told him that he needs to come in at 255. It had to be Tyson Fury. And the reason why I say that is because Tyson Fury knows Joe Joyce. They sparred countless of times. In fact, Joe Joyce was used for Fury's training camps against Deontay Wilder, I think the first two fights. So he knows him very well. And he probably told Joseph, look, this guy is going to use all his weight. He applies a relentless pressure. He doesn't stop punching. And he's going to really tire you out. So you got to, put back on some more weight to avoid that onslaught for him to use his body mass against you. Apparently that didn't work. And Tyson Fury should have known better if he advised him to do that because Tyson Fury should know that Joseph Parker does not have great cardio at all to begin with, let alone at his optimal weight. When he maximizes his speed, he doesn't have great stamina at all. So to fight a guy like Joe Joyce, you got to have great conditioning. Forget about having power. Forget about having strength against a guy like that. You're not going to outmuscle him, period. You got to use your best attributes. You got to use your feet. You got to use your speed. You got to use angles to avoid his onslaught, just like what Alexander Usyk did to him in the WSB several years ago. But unfortunately, Joseph Parker is no Alexander Usyk. But again, to Mala's point, your best attributes is your speed and your agility. That's the only way you could beat a guy like Joe Joyce is not give him any chance to crowd you. That's it. Unfortunately, I don't see any other heavyweight that could beat him other than Alexander Usyk. Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, in shape Wilder, maybe, but I'm not confident in those two guys beating him. The only guy I'm confident beating Joe Joyce is Alexander Usyk. That's the only guy I see. So yeah. All right, man, come on, you and Brotherhood. Let's come on now. Let's keep it a buck. Let's keep it respectful. I know the Brotherhood made the comment that Joyce goes out like good. Well, you know what? I don't think it's a Hamed, with all due respect, I don't think it's a fanboy comment. I think what Brotherhood is what he's mentioning is that he went out on a shield. the way he got knocked out, yeah, he tumbled down to the ground. That's exactly what happened to Brazil. That's exactly what happened to never mind. I thought you were talking about Parker. My bad. You talk about Joyce who may go out like Brazil did against Wilder. I don't know about that one, Brotherhood. I really don't, because first things first, Brazil does not have the durability like Joe Joyce. Yeah, Brazil is durable, but he's not Joe Joyce. I don't see that. It's going to take Wilder a lot of work to even knock out, let alone hurt Joe Joyce. I mean, the only place you can hurt him is in the body. That seems to be his weak spot, is the body. Anything else, you hit him on top of the head, that you're not gonna get. You're not gonna get his respect. So yeah, Jodila says that Fury can't even make up his mind. I think he should retire. Well, I mean, I think so too. I mean, I don't know what Tyson Fury wants to do. I mean, other than the fact the rumor mill is that he wants to fight Manuel Char. Then again, he may be serious about fighting Anthony Joshua. But the thing is, too, is like, why would you want to take on a guy who's ranked 62 in the world, Emmanuel Char? But let alone why you want to take on a guy like Anthony Joshua, who's coming off back-to-back losses, lost 3 of his last 5 fights where he got knocked out in one of those fights, or stopped, I should say, and his confidence is mentally shot right now. So why you want to fight him at the weakest point of his career? So if anything, Tyson Fury should fight Joe Joyce. And I think, and I implore everybody, anybody's listening right now, we need to pressure to make Queensberry to make that fight. Make that fight right now. I think Joe Joyce deserves it. He's earned it the hard way. He deserves a shot right now. Don't fucking sit there and keep him out a whole year for the Alexander Usyk mandatory fight to happen. Don't do that. Make those two fight right now. Fury versus Joyce. That's the fight we need to see. And that should be a stadium fight. That's my opinion. Yeah, Hamed says that Fury has to fight Usyk. If not Joyce or Joshua, I'm cool with that, but don't believe that Joshua fight happens right now. Nah, I really don't believe that Joshua fight will happen. But if anything, Joyce should be the one to fight Usyk. I'm sorry, Fury. Fury should fight him. But again, I don't think Fury wants to take that fight, to be honest with you. Yeah, I need Joshua and Wilder versus Joshua before 2025. Yeah, I agree, man. There's definitely unfinished business between those two. We definitely need to see that fight, but I don't know, man. Especially Anthony Joshua right now, he's definitely in the rebuilding stages of his career. So I don't think Matchroom or the Zone will want to put him in there in world level fights at the moment. I think they're going to need to rebuild him. They're going to probably give him 2 or 3 fights to build his confidence again, and then put him back in world level. So right now, I know Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua are at the low points of their career, but it seems like Deontay Wilder has got back his mental strength after that third Fury fight. But as far as physical is concerned, we have to wait and see in the Hellenius fight coming up in the next 3 weeks. We have to see where he's at physically. But as far as as of right now, if you want to talk about if they fight right now, maybe you would favor Deontay Wilder because he seems mentally confident now. He's got back his confidence again. So right now, Joshua, it would be wise not to put him in there against Deontay Wilder right now. No, not right now. I think Frank Sanchez beats Joe Joyce. You know what? Frank Sanchez is definitely a dark horse in the heavyweight division. That'd be a good fight. That's an intriguing fight. Yeah, maybe Frank Sanchez can beat him. I forgot about Frank Sanchez. Maybe he can beat him. But the one thing I would say about Frank Sanchez is that he doesn't have the foot speed. I mean, he does have good foot speed. Don't get twisted. But he doesn't have that foot speed and the the agility like Alexander Usyk. That's the thing. And I think in his last fight, Frank Sanchez did his energy start to deplete a little bit. I think it was against Kolasik. No, it wasn't against Kolasik. Who did he fight? I forgot who it was, but yeah, Frank Sanchez does have a good chance, but I'm not too confident that he could beat Joe Joyce. I'm really not confident. Not saying he can't win, but I'm not too confident about him beating him. That's what I'm just saying. I think only Usyk can beat Fury right now. Yeah, I think Usyk. Well, I think Usyk definitely. Joe Joyce, I think that's more of a toss-up, but I think Joe Joyce can beat Fury. I think he can. But I'm not confident. I'm not as confident of Joe Joyce beating Fury as much as I'm confident of Usyk beating Fury, if that makes sense. So yeah. Jadala says that Usyk should fight Wilder. I mean, why not? We have a lot of great matchups in the heavyweight division. But as far as fighting Wilder is concerned, I think Deontay needs to earn his keep. He needs to fight his way back into contention. If he beats Hellenius, which he's expected to do, if he beats Ruiz, which is supposed to be penciled in for next year, if he beats those two, then yeah. And to me, I'd rather Deontay go that route before he fights a champion again. Because if he beats those two, then his resume will be strengthened. Because we all know Deontay doesn't have a good resume right now. But if he beats Ruiz and he beats Hellenius back to back, then his resume's gotten a little better. We that's cool. So yeah. Joshua in 2017, 2018, maybe may have a chance of beating Fury, but right now I think Warren might try to make that Usyk versus Joyce. Yeah, again, that's exactly what I think they're trying to do. They're gonna probably put Usyk. They're gonna try to stall that Usyk and Fury fight long for the mandatory for the WBO to be called, and I don't like that shit. That's what Kingsbury is trying to do. Excuse my language. I think they're trying to wait for Usyk to slow down, so that way that gives Tyson Fury enough confidence to go in there and beat him. I don't like when fighters do that. I didn't like it when Ray Leonard did it to Marvin Hagler many years ago, and I certainly didn't like it when Floyd did it to Manny Pacquiao to some extent. So, yeah, I know people will disagree with me on that, but I think Floyd deliberately stalled that fight for a while so that way Pacquiao would slow down. That's just my opinion. Wilder could KO anyone if he lands on that chin, but Joyce will put a better fight up than Brazil. Yeah, I mean, I agree. He definitely put up a better fight than Brazil. And obviously, he's a better fighter than Dominic Brazil. No disrespect to Dominic Brazil. At the time, he was a top contender. We can't take that away from him. But at this point, yeah, Joe Joyce is a much more decorated fighter than Dominic Brazil. Much more decorated fighter. Let me see here. The Brotherhood says that. Hamed says, I don't think Joyce versus Fury is happening unless Joyce beats Usyk. I can't see Warren making that happen. He has two horses. Yeah. What's the thing about it too is that Frank Warren has two heavyweights right now. There are draws now. He has two pay-per-view heavyweight stars. Damn, man. Matchroom really gonna have to do something now because I think Eddie Hearn's looking at that. It's like, fuck. Now it seems like Queensberry is kind of slowly taking over the heavyweight division in the UK. I know the Matchroom fanboys are not gonna want to hear that, but that's the truth. Now Queensberry got another heavyweight star in their grasp, and that's Joe Joyce. So as I mentioned, if you want a big money fight in the UK as a heavyweight, you want to go fight, you got to see Joe Joyce. You got to go see Tyson Fury. Anthony Joshua, yeah, you still got to go see him too. But now you got 3 UK heavyweights that are draws right now. 3 of them. Now, as far as maybe I'm getting ahead of myself as far as the pay-per-view is concerned. I know this is for Joe Joyce's first headline and pay-per-view act, but we have to see what those numbers coming in and we have to see what they look like. I think maybe they've done okay. I'm not saying they're doing a million buys. I don't see that. Maybe they did probably around, if I have to get at good estimation, maybe about 300, 500K, probably around there from a UK standpoint. If that's the number they pulled in, I think that's a pretty good number for Joe Joyce, especially if this is his first pay-per-view. So, yeah. Let me see. The Brotherhood says that Frank gotta let Fury, Joyce, and Dubois figure it out. Well, yeah, to your point, Joyce already beat Dubois, so now that leaves Fury versus Joyce. Joyce versus Bacoli? Yeah, that's a good matchup. I actually like that matchup. 2 behemoth heavyweights going at it. Yeah, that's a very intriguing matchup. In fact, somebody asked me, I think Hamed or I think it was DGO. Someone asked me that, do you think after this loss, should Joseph Parker drop out of the top 10? I mean, that's hard to say. Maybe, maybe not. But if you are going to drop him out of the top 10, then maybe Martin McCauley need to get in there. Because I think he's deserved it over his win over Tony Oka. So, yeah, Martin McCauley deserves to get into the top 10 rankings. So, yeah, Joyce versus McCauley, that's a good matchup, too. I'll definitely like to see that one. Fury doesn't have to fight Joyce. I disagree. It has to be Fury versus Usyk ASAP. If not, it's gonna be a soft touch, which Top Rank will schedule to have undisputed next year. Well, look, I get what you're saying, Hamed, but here's my thing. If Tyson Fury is talking about having a stadium fight, mind you, he had an easy fight with Dillian White. That was an easy mandatory defense. We all know that. We all seen that fight from our very eyes. Why not fight a guy who's ready right now who could test you? And that's Joyce. He didn't look like he got injured in the Joseph Parker fight. He didn't look like he took damage. He looks like he's ready. He seems fresh after going 11 rounds with the guy. Why not? Why not put in Fear versus Joyce? That's a pay-per-view fight and that's a stadium fight right now. That would sell. Queensberry is an in-house fight for them. It should be no problem. Yeah. Now, if you think Tyson Fury should get a soft touch, I disagree there because he had an easy fight with Dillian White. So why should he get a soft touch after that fight? That part I don't agree with there. But then I understand Joyce deserves a title shot more than Joshua, but I don't see either fight happening. Yeah, I get it. I get what you're saying there. But my thing is that Joyce is on the same banner as Queensberry. If Frank Warren has another pay-per-view, possibly I should say, Frank Warren has possibly another UK heavyweight that's a star, and that's a Joyce. So why not maximize your star potential? Throw that fight right now. Since Tyson Fury is talking about wanting a big stadium fight, why not? But yeah, I agree. Maybe it may not happen, but I think there should be pressure on Queensberry to make that fight happen. I mean, Joyce deserves it. He's 37 years old. I know some people are going to look at his age, but he's not that old if when you're talking about heavyweights. But yeah, he's in great form. He's in his prime. In fact, if Tyson Fury fights him and beats him, he gets a lot of credit for beating him. So why not? Yeah, I'll send you a link, Hamed. Give me 1 second. So why not? So while I bring in Hamed, I'm going to talk about this one real quickly. Eddie Hearn sues Jake Paul for supposedly $100 million of damages, right? So the lawsuit was filed in the district court, I think in New York, I believe, a federal district court in New York by his attorney, Frank Salzano. According to Eddie Hearn, he claims before I get into that, the reason why Eddie Hearn is suing Jake Paul for $100 million of damages is because Jake Paul threw out an accusation that Glenn Feldman, who we all know infamously scored a 115-113 win over Alexander Usyk for Anthony Joshua in the rematch. We all knew that Usyk clearly won that fight. Glenn Feldman was bribed to give Joshua that win. And the reason why Jake Paul says this is because Glenn Feldman was also the same official who infamously scored 97-93 for Katie Taylor against Amanda Serrano. He gave Katie Taylor 7 rounds over 3, only 3 rounds for Amanda Serrano, which we all saw in our eyes that Serrano won that fight. No way you could objectively say that Serrano only won 3 rounds, all right? And by the way, Glenn Feldman is also the same guy who gave Keith Thurman the win over Manny Pacquiao. Even though we all knew that Pacquiao beat Thurman. We clearly saw that in our eyes, but he somehow gave Thurman the fight, even though Thurman had suffered the knockdown against Pacquiao early in that fight. So, now again, Jake Paul made that accusation. Now, to be fair, I understand why Eddie Hearn's upset about that because Jake Paul has to have some tangible proof of evidence to back up that claim. But according to Eddie Hearn, the reason why they're suing for the amount of damages is because he claims that Matchroom has suffered a reputable and financial damage over those accusations. That's what he said. And because of that, that's why they're seeking that amount from Jake Paul. We all know that Jake Paul doesn't have $100 million to his name. Assets alone, maybe he has like $30 million at best. Maybe at best. But no way he has $100 million worth of assets or damages. No, to pay those damages. No way. And some people are going to wonder why you're asking for $100 million just because some guy made an accusation about a judge, as allegedly corrupt as Glenn Feldman, which we all think he is because of those atrocious scorecards that he had in those also high-profile fights, and he had some before that. And I have defended Glenn Feldman because he has scored objectively for some fights, but those 3 fights, that's definitely leaves a bad taste in my mouth because that's all within a year that he's gave. Well, all within 3 years he's given those 3 bad scorecards. Yeah. So I would say though is that some people are suggesting the reason why Eddie Hearn is really suing Jake Paul for that amount of money because the fact that the zone has lost a lot of money as it seems already. And I'll talk about that shortly too because the zone has lost out a lot of money on the last two Canelo pay-per-views. Let's not get it twisted. They did. And there again, people are suggesting that Hearn is trying to recoup those losses through this lawsuit. That's what they're claiming. Not saying that's true. So Eddie Hearn, don't sue me. That's what people are suggesting. That's just a theory. It's not concrete. But the fact is that I think Jake Paul was given a chance to retract his statement, but he refused to do it. So now that's why this lawsuit is going to progress. Now, as far as $100 million is concerned, nah, no way. He's not going to get that at all. Now, unless Jake Paul really could prove that Glenn Feldman was corrupt in that fight, then yeah, good luck to him. Good luck. The Brotherhood got jokes. All right, let me send the link right now. I'm gonna put it in the chat so you guys, anybody can jump in. While you do that, guys, I'm gonna get charge my laptop before it goes out. Give me 1 second, guys. All right, guys, I'm back. So yeah, again, according to Eddie Hearn, the reason why he's filing the suit against Jake Paul is because he claims that the accusations that was thrown by Jake Paul caused a lot of reputable and financial damage to Matchroom and its brand. But in all truth, we don't know if that's really the case. But again, some people are suggesting the reason why they're seeking these damages is just to offset the losses that they had from the last two pay-per-views from Canelo and losses in elsewhere that they suffered so far for the zone and Matchroom. So yeah, I mean, again, that's just a suggestion, that's just a theory. But $100 million seems to be very, very, very steeped. I mean, is Eddie Hearn actually saying that the Matchroom's lost the total revenue $100 million over that accusation within a matter of days? Really? Did they lose partnerships over that? Maybe that's what he's suggesting. So if that's the case, then he's going to have to prove that in court. So we'll see. We'll see. What else we got here? So Hamed says, I understand what you're saying, Dan, but whose obligation is to fight Joyce? Is Joyce WBO Mando or WBA? He is the WBO mandatory. I'm not saying Tyson Fury is obligated to fight him. I'm saying that Tyson Fury at least owes us that fight. Because again, he got an easy win over Dillian White. Easy knockout win. Didn't take no damage in that fight. Let alone, we don't even know if Dillian White even landed a punch against him in that fight. So why not fight Joe Joyce, who's ready, who's a stiff comp, he's a very tough challenge. He'll be ready in December. Why not make that fight? But again, I agree. I don't think Warren and Queensberry is going to want to do that. They're going to they're going to wait. They're going to wait for Joyce to sit out. Not say they're going to sit him out for the rest of the year until the WBO calls the mandatory between Joyce versus Usyk. That's exactly what they're going to do. And look, if they wanted to have Joe Joyce fight Alexander Usyk, okay, fine. But at least have Usyk fight Fury first. All right. And the winner of that fight, whoever the winner of that fight is, becomes a WBO champion. Then Joe Joyce has earned a shot. But if they're going to deliberately stall that fight to the point that the WBO says, okay, we're going to call our mandatory before the undisputed fight happened, then I'm going to be upset. And I'm going to blame Queensberry for that, if that's the case. Now, if Alexander Usyk, if there's any reason why he stalled the fight, then yeah, he deserves blame. But it seems to me that as me looking from the outside in, it seems like that Matchroom are the ones who are going to try to purposely stall that fight. So, yeah. Why not? And shout out to Mr. Classic in the chat. Classic, Mr. Classic Metal, man. Yeah, he says that. Yeah, I'll get into that. Ahmed says Fury would be given a pass if he fights Joshua instead of Joyce, but I agree. If Fury fights Char, is indefensible. Yeah, let alone they're talking about that being a stadium fight. Let alone being a pay per view. So good luck, Tyson Fury and Queensberry, to sell that fight. Good luck selling that one. You're fighting a guy who's ranked 60th in the world or 62 in the world. I know they're gonna try to try to promote that as if we're fighting a former world champion. Why not? I'm like, yeah, but the guy's not even top 20. He's not even top 30. And you're fighting him? Oh, please. Yeah, Hearn got exposed. I mean, yeah, he's getting exposed all over the place. Yeah, let's talk about that. The pay-per-views. I see Eddie Hearn, Matchroom fanboys trying to say that Canelo and Golovkin 3 did more than that. Well, here's what they're doing. They moved the goalpost in that situation. I see Ahmed coming in. They moved the goalpost by saying that, well, we did over 1 million worldwide. I was like, oh, really? If that's the case, then why don't we give Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder the benefit of the doubt? The second fight. And the reason why I say that because that did over 1.1 million. That did more than Canelo Golovkin 3. But yet we say that's a flop, and let alone Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder earned purses less than Canelo and Golovkin combined. As I recall, Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder in the second fight earned $25 million each guaranteed, plus upside. So how can we say Canelo Golovkin 3 was a success, but we call Wilder and 2 fight a failure? That doesn't make any sense to me. So, I mean, to all those people out there that are saying that Canelo and Golovkin 3 was a success, I want them to come back and make a retraction and say that Wilder and Fury 2 was a success. I'm waiting for people to make videos about that, but they won't. So, yeah, I'm not going to waste my breath on that. What's up, Ahmed?
Yeah, Dan, I will
Yeah,
say one thing
yeah,
before I get to the fight and or
yeah,
the whole heavy picture. Listen to Dan Rafael's podcast. He's on the Big Fight Weekend podcast, but
yeah,
the last one they reviewed the fights, but they got into the pay per view. Now he broke it down to a letter, and I messaged Dan on Facebook because he wasn't sure about. Because I've met him before. I think it was the Golovkin Brook fight before that, but he wasn't sure how many countries that fight was on pay per view. Now I done a bit of research because someone posted it the day after. I think
yeah,
it was only on pay per view in 6 countries,
yeah,
which was Australia, Canada, New Zealand, UK, Ireland, and I believe America. That's
right,
6 countries. And he made a good point. Even in Mexico and Kazakhstan, which the 2 countries the fighters were from,
yeah,
the fight wasn't on pay per view. So for these guys, like, and it wasn't just Lance Pugman and these guys. It was basically DAZN. He said once he put the story out about the pay per view numbers, DAZN, someone higher up from DAZN immediately like contacted him, called him. He said, "Where did you get the number from?" Now, I don't really argue about pay per view numbers and all that. Like, I know a lot of these guys that do normally are either fanboy in one way or the other, but
right.
when the Bivol fight, Dan Rafael made a good point. When the Bivol fight numbers were, what's it called? When
Release.
when they were released, when he did the story, he said he didn't hear a peep from Eddie Hearn or DAZN or any of those guys, the executives or nothing. But the fact this fight, they paid these guys so much, and this did, I think he was saying the
Yeah,
most he heard from the source was up to 600,000. Now,
right.
look, I don't think that's a flop in today's market compared to the other fighters, but for these guys, for them to be doing 1.3 million on HBO, 1.2 million, I think in that sense it is a flop because they paid both of these guys. Basically, I think it was Golovkin got paid like 25 to 20 million, and Canelo got paid, I don't know if it's 40 or 50 million, whatever the hell it was. They
Yeah,
lost a lot of money on that. I know the zone are global, so they did make a lot of money from some of the other countries and like the markets, other markets like the Mexico TV rights and all that. But in just the American market, they actually did do badly on the pay per view scale. I know people will say you can't compare Showtime and HBO to the zone, but the Bivol fight was not on the HBO, Showtime, or Fox or any of those networks. It was on the zone, and no one could say to me that
yeah,
Bivol brought in any thing, buys or anything. Like with Caleb Plant, I get it. He had a bit of a
yeah,
what's it called, following from PBC and the Fox and all that. But the
yeah,
point is, for years we kept hearing these are the two whatever biggest names, or this is the biggest fight in boxing. I strongly disagreed, but I think now if Crawford and Spence fight, I'm not sure that fight maybe do more than this fight, or maybe just do as many people who buys, because this fight was expected to do, I think, a bit more. Say 750,000, 800,000. It didn't. And Dan made a good point. He said, I'll let you chime in, but he did say one thing. He said, who has got more to lie and lose, me or Eddie Hearn? A writer or a guy who's got a horse in the race? And I think that's how I think I'd put it. And I think Eddie Hearn, as Dan Rafael was not happy, but he kind of ripped into him. I wish it was on a bigger platform, or that
Yeah.
the podcast he was on was a bit more mainstream, because he kind of went into detail and even said, he goes, the people that are doing this are conflicting the worldwide numbers to the
Yeah.
American market, because he made a good point. The Canelo Golovkin 2, although it did less pay-per-view buys than the first fight, actually generated more money, because the price tag, I wasn't even aware of this because I couldn't remember, but he said the rematch was, I think, for more money. I think it cost 80 something dollars, and the first fight was maybe 70 something. So even though it did less
Oh, more.
buys,
Yeah. So even though they less buys, but they made way more money on that fight.
yeah,
Rematch. Yeah. And one thing I wanted to point out to what people don't neglect, they keep neglecting, is the fact that both fighters got paid upside amount on top of their guarantees. So the upside is obviously you got to split the pay-per-view revenue. From the last time I checked, I think the revenue split is like 55-45. 55 go to the network, to the broadcaster, and 45 go to
yeah.
the promoter and the fighter. And the ticket revenue too, you got to split that as well. So I don't know what the split is, but at the same time, you got to take those things into account. Yes, they broke the gate for $22 million, but the zone still had to split that revenue with the fighters. They still have to split that. So how they still took a loss either way. They did. So don't sit there and tell us that they did great worldwide, but yeah, you don't give Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder that benefit out. The second fight, that is, because that second fight did more buys than the Canelo Golovkin 3 combined. It did, but yet we
Oh,
still
way more, way more. It did over. Sorry, it did over a million pay-per-view buys. But
yeah
there's also the BT. There's
right.
also the BT pay-per-view aspect from the UK. I know that probably didn't do as much in America, as much in the UK as it did in America. But I'm pretty sure I've heard it did somewhere up to 500 to 600,000 pay-per-views. That is quite a lot for the what is the UK fans, if that number is actually backed up and is accurate, because that's like what's it called, 500,000 pay-per-view buys in
Yeah.
the middle of the night. But regarding this fight, it did do probably well at the box office in terms of at the gate. I mean, not the box office, sorry, at the gate, and all that, ticket sales and all that. But to my knowledge, Wilder Fury, the rematch, I'm pretty sure that was the highest gate since Holyfield and Lewis, or did it break that
Yeah,
record? So
it broke that
you
record.
can't call that a flop,
Yeah,
and you can't say this is not a flop. Like, you can't have it both ways.
exactly. That's my whole point, because that fight itself broke the heavyweight record at the gate, and it stands right now. Now, as far as the overall gate, yeah, that goes to Canelo Golovkin 3. But don't use that as a success, but then shit on Wilder Fury 2 and call that a failure. That's why I don't understand. You can't, as you say, you can't go have it both ways with this. And that's why I'm very angry and upset about these fanboys who want to keep moving the goalposts over this. Let's be real. The Zone lost out on that fight. They lost out on 2 straight Canelo pay-per-view fights right now. So let's call it for what it is. They did. Why all of a sudden
Yeah,
now,
but they're
try,
not
try,
gonna.
yeah,
They're
go
not
ahead.
gonna. Sorry, they're not gonna. They're not gonna keep it real, because these guys have been bitter for the last couple of years. Because Eddie Hearn has been losing one purse bid after another.
Yeah,
Several of his key fighters have lost. But regarding Wilder Fury, I think both guys were overpaid in the rematch. But
oh, yeah, I agree.
you could argue that Canelo and Golovkin got overpaid, because I'm not sure Golovkin should have been paid that much for this third fight. And he kind
Yeah,
of laid a dud for like 7 or 8 rounds. But one thing that I was trying to figure out, how much did Canelo get paid for the third fight? Because
45
Golovkin's
million.
got it.
His
I
guarantee is
thought
45 million.
Golovkin
No,
45
no,
or 24.
no. Golovkin's guarantee was 20 million, and Canelo's guarantee was 45 million.
All right, so they definitely lost money then, because that is
Yeah,
a hell of a lot. That's
yeah,
a hell of a lot. But I don't blame Canelo and Golovkin. They fighters, like Dan Rafael said. You're
yeah.
gonna try and get every penny out of it, but don't turn around. And this is regarding the zone, Matchroom, and these fanboys who like to play managers or side of the street. Like, don't turn around and say this wasn't a flop, because we're not talking about the worldwide market because Dan Raphael made a good point. When Mayweather Pacquiao, the pay-per-view numbers were out, I think some of the numbers reported were a bit over, what's it
We're
called?
inflated.
Over
Inflated.
inflated. But I think I heard Rick Laser or someone saying they probably did about somewhere between 3.4 to 4 million or something. I think it was reported 4.6 million. Nonetheless, but we didn't hear about the
Yeah, man, you there? We lost you there for a second. Yeah, it seems like you're having audio issues.
million worldwide.
Yeah.
I don't think it's something to boast about because the first two fights just on HBO in America.
Ahmed, are you there?
Just did a bad job of
Yeah.
marketing the fight, and the fight I think was more in demand 3-4 years ago. 2019 2020 was a sell by date. I just think it was a couple of years too late, and that's why they probably lost out. But I was a bit surprised that the Bivol fight did as much as this fight because I thought this fight would do a bit more, but it actually did about the same amount of buys.
Right. But yeah, it is good to your point though. Dan Raphael didn't bring up a good point on his podcast. He said because wait a minute, I put out the figures. I broke the story on the he broke the story, I should say, on Canelo and Bivol, and he didn't hear repeat from Matchroom about that. And yet here all of a sudden he does the same thing for Canelo Golovkin 3. Now they want to discredit him. That's bizarre. So yeah, at the same time, Eddie Hearn, I tell these people too, is like, well, Eddie Hearn, some people are running around says, yeah, Eddie Hearn exposes Fat Dan, yada yada yada. I'm like, what did he expose? All he did is claim that Dan Raphael omitted information.
Exactly, exactly.
That's
And
all
he
he
didn't even
did.
release the number. He did. Dan Rafael said
Yeah.
that the guys from the zone asked him, "Who's your source?"
Yeah.
And then he said, "You tell me the number they did." But then they kept saying they did more. But if it did more, my only theory is this: I know Ellaby, Stephen Espinosa, and these guys is kind of coming off like they're being a bit hypocritical because they've kind of I don't know if held back the numbers or kind of it looks like at times they tried to hide some of their numbers. But
Yeah.
the thing with this fight is if Eddie Hearn claims this did more than Dan's number and whatever Rick Lee's and I don't know who else posted the numbers. If it did do more, then release the actual number in the America. But they're not. They keep going on about the worldwide numbers. But again, that's like 6 different territories about the UK, Ireland, Canada. These are like different markets. If you add all those numbers for the Canelo Golovkin first and second fight, or the Wilder Fury rematch of the third fight, or Mayweather Pacquiao, you'll probably get a double or triple amount of buys that the number is reported in America. So like it doesn't add up. You can't use that. Like to me, what you said was damage control. It seemed like.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, Eddie Hearn didn't even dispute the numbers in the U.S. that Dan Raphael reported. He didn't even do that. All he said is that, well, yeah, we got most of our buys from the U.S., but he didn't even dispute the number that we put out. He tried to meet. That's why I tell these people, some people came in my, I think it was the comment section. And I was like, well, first of all, again, he didn't even dispute what Dan Raphael said. All he did was like, well, he's omitted information. He didn't dispute the U.S. number. So how did he actually expose Dan Raphael? He didn't at all. He just got mad that it came out, and they're trying to move the goalposts on it and say, well, we did 1 million worldwide. I'm like, well, since when have we ever used that as a platform to tell whether a fight was a financial success or not worldwide? Yes, we could do that to some degree, but we all know where the fight is originated from, where the big audience is from, is in America. That's where the profit's going to come from, and that's where we're going to be focusing on. We're focused on how well it does there, in that territory. You know what I mean? If this is the UK, like with Joshua Usyk, for example, the first fight, you're going to focus on what the performance is in the UK, domestically, commercial success. That's what the fights success are based on, commercial success. Worldwide is one thing, yes, but commercial success is what counts the most. So, yeah, I mean, at the same time, again, they're moving the goalposts, and I'd like to see those retractions and rebuttals for the Wilder Fury 2 performance, because they all said that was a failure, even though it did way more buys. So,
but these guys are Matchroom fanboys, man. Like you can't take these guys seriously. They're just living off super chats
Yeah,
and trying to cater to the AJ, Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, whatever. You could do that, fair enough, but
yeah,
don't come out and call yourself objective or say you're a boxing fan, because you're not. You're not any better than those PBC fanboys or those guys that cater to whatever. What is it, PBC and the Alheim and whatever stable, because
yeah,
I kept hearing about all these fights are flopping on pay per view, this and that. But if you're going to the back for the zone and you're not willing to criticize Matchroom, or if you're not being fair and objective or impartial, then
yeah,
you're not any better, because you're actually doing you're just as bad, but just doing it for a different network. And the thing is with the zone, they've kind of been all over the place. One minute they're saying they're not going to do pay per views are dead. Now they're putting all these fights on pay per views. I personally think the Canelo Golovkin fight was inevitable. It was going to happen and it was going to be on
right,
pay per view. But you should have done this 2-3 years earlier, and you didn't have to go through putting Bival's fight with Canelo on pay per view and saying pay per views dead. You should have just, what's the word? You should have just maybe take a one step at a time, because now they're just looking bad. And I know PBC have been putting on a lot of pay per views, but you can't charge guys in the UK and in America for subscriptions. In America, well, I think it's almost over $100, and then
right.
ask for a pay per view which costs 85 on top. You're gonna rightly be called out. But if you're like being hypocritical or regarding this, then you're just a fanboy as well, because you're not any
Right.
better than those PBC guys, because they do the same, but just for
Right.
the PBC.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, yeah, man. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it is what it is. They're all to your point. They're all just trying to make sure they could continue to appease their fanatics, so that way they continue to get those super chats and those subscriber counts. So that's what all that matters to them at this point. But it is what it is. Let them do them. But at some point, you got to have some form of integrity, man. That's all I got to say. I'm gonna read the
Well, I
chat.
think they maybe need to get a better job then, like you said. But I mean, I mean, people could do what they want.
Yeah,
Look, if they're having struggles to get a better job and that's one of their main incomes,
yeah,
don't go out and call the LDBC and those guys humbles if you're not any better. Like I
right.
don't I don't disagree with some of those guys that cater to the PBC, and I just don't see on YouTube. I see on Twitter as well, but. If you're doing it for the Matchroom and the zone, then you're not any better. But yeah, I'll let you get to the chat.
Yeah, let me get to the chat real quickly. Classic Metal says that Sue and Jake Paul has nothing to do with the losses. It has to is to get the judge to shut the guy up because he overstepped his boundaries. When people sue, they always aim high with those ridiculous amounts. Yeah, that's a good point. I think it could be an intimidation tactic to keep him quiet because we all know Glenn Feldman is a shady judge. There's no way around it. In fact, that Glenn Feldman couldn't even give an explanation when Rob Tippett. Shout out to Rob Tippett over ID Boxing, who caught him and asked him point blank. First question he asked him, how did you score the Joshua and Usyk fight? Glenn Feldman tried to be very, very clever and very condescending with his response. Said, well, I scored it the way I did. And he said, well, how did you find 7 rounds for Joshua and 5 rounds for Usyk? And then what did Glenn Feldman do? He's like, well, you're going to have to talk to my supervisor. I can't answer that. If I was Rob Tippett, I would say, well, wait a minute. You're the judge. Why I got to ask the supervisor? You're the one who scored the fight, not him. But anyways, yeah, Mahler says that Golovkin was 40 and put a lot of people off. I mean, yeah, with that performance, it kind of looked like he was in survivor mode. He probably thought to himself, like, you know what, this is probably my last fight. Why do I need to go out there and exert myself and get hurt? I got a family; they care about me a lot. I have my health intact. I made a lot of money, so I'm pretty much done. I had like 350 amateur fights in my career, so yeah, you know, it is what it is. Mala also said that with all the legal streaming, it's very risky to pay each fighter over $20 million these days. It'd be better to give them $10 million up front and then a guaranteed percentage of the pay per view. Yeah, I think that should be the minimum going forward because with all the legal streaming going on, it's really going to take it's going to really hurt a lot of promoters, broadcasters. It is hurting them already. So at this point, they're going to have to change the pay structure. Now, whether fighters like it or not, that's the way it is. They're going to have to change it so that way they can at least beat they can stay afloat and make a profit off those fights. Because right now they can't continue to lose all this money because of this illegal streaming, and they're doing their best to stop it, but apparently they can't really stop it. So, Mr. Classic Mel says, "Why is there so much about pay-per-view numbers instead of what happened in the ring?" You know what? That's a good question because I'm
Can
a
I
O's
answer
Boston
that?
fan. But go ahead, go ahead, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Yeah, I'll let you finish, but I wanted to answer that question. So I'll let you finish. You were saying
Okay,
something.
cool, cool. Yeah, let me just say that I understand where you're coming from. Classic. Me, I'm an old school boxing fan. Growing up watching the sport in the 80s and 90s, we never really talked about numbers. We never talked about purses. It never got to that point. I guess it all started in the Mayweather era, where all this started to become, sensationalized in a way. Like Floyd would always use these excuses why he avoided certain fights. He always look at a guy's record. He always point to the fact that you only made 3 million in this fight, so why should I fight you? Give you this, that, and third.
Yeah.
It's all this stuff, man. I'm sure this has all been going behind the scenes before we all became privy to it many years ago. But it just got so sensationalized to the point that everybody's using this as an argument to trash another fighter, to trash another network. It is what it is. Me personally, or Hamed myself, look,
Yeah.
we'll use it against a certain opponent, but we do it because we use it as we use it because we want to use it as a argument to those who shit on other fighters for the same standard. So we want to put them to the task and say, okay, look at these numbers. Why aren't you criticizing that person for his performance, or why you praise the other fighter for doing equally bad? So that's why I guess that's why there's a lot of talk behind that. Is a good way to shut down a network, a promoter, or a fighter. So yeah, I guess we shouldn't be talking about it, but it is what it is, man. Go ahead,
I
Ahmed.
mean, I agree with everything you're saying, Dan, but I will add a couple of things. The
Yeah,
thing is this. This is the reality of boxing. This is what it's come down to. Not from
yeah,
the fighters, but from a lot of fans. There's a lot of fanboys, there's a lot of ignorant boxer
yeah,
fans right now, and a lot of the hold up, a lot of these fights are not happening, or guys ducking, or whatever, stolen fights. You get whichever side of the street they're on. You get these guys defending and putting out videos or whatever tweets,
yeah,
posts, kind of defending this and kind of supporting this.
yeah,
Now, a classic example is I think recently there was a back and forth between Devin Haney and Javante Davis. Devin
right,
Haney I think, kind of went down to his level and started saying, I'm making more money. But my point is this: Devin Haney, out of all those guys, the young fighters, if you exclude Teofimo Lopez, he's actually been willing to fight, quote unquote, the best guys. He's got all the belts at lightweight. He's become undisputed. Maybe hasn't got the greatest resume, or maybe hasn't cleaned out completely the division. But when these other guys were not fighting, guys like Lomachenko, guys like Devin Haney,
yeah,
Teofimo Lopez, whatever, but he's become one of those guys as well. When
yeah,
these guys are not fighting each other, you got to call out the hypocrisy, the fanboys who start talking about this. And
sure,
one thing about this fight the other day, regarding the pay-per-view numbers, this is another thing. These guys were going on and on about the Fury Wilder fight, which I thought you should have given credit.
yeah,
Even though the first fight, some people didn't like it, but we couldn't get AJ and Wilder. We managed to get Fury and Wilder. First
right,
and second fight, I'm talking about. Those are two good fights. Now, even the third fight, I know a lot of people don't want to see it because he was contractual obligated. I thought that was more reasoning to see that than the Golovkin Canelo third fight,
yeah,
because Golovkin was 40. I know
mm,
Waldo's coming off a beating, but heavyweights don't age as much and styles make fights. I think
sure,
Golovkin was getting worse and Canelo was getting better. And on top of that, now people are just making up lies to what's it called, defend this pay-per-view, which kind of flopped, and it kind of just works against what they try saying half the time, because they trying to fanboy for one network to the other. And this is something I don't really like talking about, but it's often something that's come around since social media and
yeah,
the Mayweather era has been about, because often times more than often that these guys, either the fighters or the fans, whatever of the networks or the fighters, are arguing against each other about these things. And I personally don't like arguing about it, but like you said, you got to call out you got to counter argument, you got to call out the hypocrisy, because these guys will kind of defend. Like, look, a classic example, I don't like Tyson Fury fighting Manuel Cha, but if he fights AJ or Joyce or Usyk, either of those fights, I could actually say he will be given a pass. Now, I know some people may not like the AJ fight happening next, but my point is, where do people stand with the objectivity? Because him
right,
fighting Manuel Cha right now, even if it does 80, 90,000, and people start saying, he did a lot. there's no way you give that a pass because is you can't defend that, man. He should not be fighting a guy like Manuel Cha, who's not even a top 20 or 30
Yeah.
heavyweight. And that comes down to my point. Like, you got to call out the double standards. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I mean, back to Fury real quickly. He should not be fighting Manuel Char. There's no way in hell that fight should even happen, let alone Manuel Char is not even rated in any sanctioned body right now because he's been so inactive and he hasn't done anything within the last, 3, 4 years now? Well, actually, he did fight Christopher Lovejoy, but that was 2 years ago. That was it. He hasn't done anything. So other than that, yeah, I see what you're saying. You gotta at some point, at some time, you gotta draw the line. Even if it's your favorite fighter, you have to draw the line and speak out against it and say, you know what? Like what I do with Deontay with Wilder. I'm like, look, I like him. He's my heavyweight, but I gotta draw the line sometimes. There's some things I don't like what he's doing, and I gotta call it out. I don't like it. I gotta hold the same standard what I like with other fighters, like for Wilder, like I do for other fighters. I have to keep it fair. And some guys don't like me because of that, but it is what it is. I'm not here to impress you. So
I
I
mean,
just
yeah,
get
you can't win with everyone. You
you
can't win
can't win.
sometimes with some people
Yeah,
as well. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's
No,
true.
but I will say one thing. I won't hold it against Fury if he doesn't fight Joyce. I understand what you're saying, but yeah, absolutely. There's no defending him fighting Manuel Cha. He could fight about another 7 or 8 guys instead of Cha, but just like the Golovkin Vanes Matty Rosen fight, I
Yeah,
lambasted Golovkin over that. I called that out, and he kind of lost me as a fan for a couple of years. But I will say one thing: if Fury doesn't fight Joyce and he fights Joshua, I won't blame him. And I think it may be the right decision, just looking
yeah,
at from his team point of view and from Frank Warren, because you got 2 heavyweights, and Joyce is the mandatory for Usyk's belts, one of the belts, so I think 2. Usyk's got more belts. So for Fury to fight him right now, I don't know if that's the right move. I would rather see him fight Joyce than Manuel Cha, but if he
yeah,
fights one of the other top heavyweights, at that point, I won't argue too much because I think as long as Fury fights Usyk or Joyce, whoever has the belts, the fight after this, say if it's AJ he fights next, at that point, I think I'll give him some credit. But if he fights Cha and then I don't know, doesn't fight Usyk or Joyce or whatever, that at that point you gotta keep calling him out because he's just going from one shitty move to another. But if he fights AJ and then he fights Usyk, at that point I think that's fair enough. But say if he fights Cha now and then he doesn't fight Usyk, well, and he ends up fighting Joshua, then yeah, he deserves to be called out because Joyce is in line, but I personally think we need to see these guys just fight each other. If it's not Usyk and Fury, then I think Usyk and Joyce is not a bad fight, and
yeah.
Fury should just fight one of the top guys and then fight the winner of that fight because regardless if Usyk wins or if Joyce wins, I think either of those fights shouldn't be hard to make.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree there. That's definitely some great points there. So what I was gonna say, yeah, someone brought this up earlier. Maybe it was you, in the chat before you came on. Someone asked me, does Joseph Parker does he retire, or if he doesn't retire, do you think he's still a top 10 heavyweight at this point? What are your thoughts about that?
I don't think he's a top heavyweight, but you could argue he may be low fringe top 10. I don't know. I didn't hear everything you say, but what do you think? Like, what? Oh, do you? I don't think he should retire, but I'm not sure he's. I definitely not top 5 heavyweight, but I'm not sure he's at the moment even a top 10. I'll have to look at the rankings, but
Yeah,
I'll put him like 9 or 10 or maybe even lower because Hirgovic, Joyce, these guys they keep on winning, and at that
yeah,
point, I
McCauley.
think we need to reshuffle some of the rankings.
Yeah, let me look at that while we speak. Someone mentioned Martin McCauley. I think that was the Brotherhood. And I was like, you know what? Maybe Martin McCauley deserved to be in the top 10 over his win over Tony Yoka. So why not? Or, like you said, Phil Herkovich. But the problem with Herkovich is that he didn't deserve that last win against Zhang. We know he lost that fight, but it is what it is.
But he
Uh,
won. He won it. He won it on paper. He won it on paper. I
yeah,
have not seen the fight. I think it was a controversial decision, but he did actually win on the fight on paper. We have to be consistent. We have to go by. I don't always agree with the judges, but Parker just got knocked out, so I can't put Parker
yeah.
ahead of Hirgovic.
Yeah, that's
But if
true.
you're
Whatever's
saying,
on paper, we have to go on that.
yeah,
Oh, actually, Joseph Parker is actually rated number 3 before the loss. He was right
number
behind
three,
Deontay Wilder. Yeah.
how does that work? So Fury is not ranked, and Usyk is the champion. Is that what
Yeah, Usyk is the lineal champion. So right now, there's the top 10. Well, since supposedly Fury retired because of that, the Ring Magazine and the other, besides ESPN and TBRB, they removed him from the top 10. So right now, you have Anthony Joshua number one, Wilder number two, Parker number three. Well, now he's going to probably drop all the way down, or might be moved out of the rankings. Who knows? Number four, Andrew Ruiz. Number five, Dillian White. Number six, Joe Joyce. Number seven, Luis Ortiz. Number eight, Phil Herkovich. Number nine, Frank Sanchez, who's the dark horse. And number 10, Julie Zhang. So obviously they're going to do a lot of shuffling around. So it looks like nobody's going to enter, no other heavyweights going to enter this current crop right now. So if anything, maybe Joe Joyce need to go number three behind Deontay Wilder. That's what I think. What do you think? Yeah, Ahmed went on mute. All right. Mute yourself. Oh yeah, he went on mute. Okay. Wait for Ahmed to get back in. So let me see the rest of the comments here. Yeah, Mala says that most of the legal streams on is on YouTube, Facebook, and other platforms. But they can't be sued, and they have their protections under law, so that can't be held accountable for what others do on there. Yeah, unfortunately, that's the situation we live in right now. All right, man. I'll give you a couple minutes because I might drop off eventually. So yeah, I'll give you a couple minutes. I think it's also annoying when Davis keeps yapping about his bank account when fighters call him out. On top of that, he talks like he's has something stuck in his cheeks. I gotta make more. Well, I'm not sure if Gervonta Davis is going to have much money after this trial. After his case is going to go hit and run case is going to go to trial. So he may not get out as a situation clean, but there's a possibility he may not get convicted. But it sure is going to cost him money legally. So I mean, I obviously I don't talk about Gervonta Davis that much because he's got to do something, man. I mean, he hasn't really shown me anything. Yes, he's a terrific fighter. He's a good fighter. He's got skills. He's a decorated amateur, but I haven't really seen much of him for me to be impressed with. I know the Isaac Cruz fight was a very good fight that he's been in a very long time, but other than that, I mean, Mimi, some would argue that he lost that fight, but it was a close fight. It could have gone either way. So, but anyhow, other than that, he's got to show me something, man. I'm just being honest. He's got to show me something. Well, for me to even give him any time on my platform, I know people don't even going to care, but it is what it is. Classic also says that Mark Breland should have dragged Wilder's ass to court. I mean, it's shameful how Wilder dragged his name in the mud, through the mud, utterly disgusting. Yeah, trust me, I spoke out against that as well, man. I mean, look, say what you will about Mark Breland. Maybe he wasn't a good enough trainer for Deontay Wilder. That's one thing. I get it. But to sit there and drag that man's name and ruin him ruin his reputation, basically, that's what Deontay Wilder did. And we haven't heard from Mark Breland much ever since that fallout. I know he'll post here and there, but other than that, we haven't, we really haven't heard anything. So from him, and that's sad. That's sad that Deontay had to do that shit, and I definitely didn't agree with that. So, yeah. Okay, cool. Classic also said that Fury was expecting Joshua to decline his offer, after which he could have used that to talk about how Joshua ducked him. But oops, that didn't happen as planned. Yeah, you know what? That's one thing. But now, supposedly, here's what's happening. There's a little bit of a reversal of fortune at this point. Now that they've received the contract, Matchroom and Joshua in 258, that is. At first, they said that it seems everything looks good. They have no problem with it. Now, Eddie Hearn is coming out saying that it's all over the place. We need to have some revisions. Then we got to get the TV networks involved, and that's going to take more time. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Hold on. How can you say it's going to take more time when the fight is penciled in for December 3rd? I mean, don't the networks need a month to sort this out? I mean, what's the deal? Are they going to, I mean, it's just weird how this thing is playing out. And me personally, I just don't think it's going to happen. It's a smokescreen. I really believe that for the most part. I believe that Tyson Fury deliberately did this to use it as a shield to tell people, hey, guess what? Alexander Usyk did not want to fight me in December. Neither did Anthony Joshua. So I'm going to fight Manuel Char. That's what he's going to use. He's been using this as an excuse to fight Char, knowing that, if that's the case, knowing that people is not going to like that fight. people are going to criticize him for that, and he's going to receive a big backlash. But at the same time, for Anthony Joshua, the only criticism I have for him is that don't call somebody's bluff and accept the terms, and then turn around and say you don't like the contract. Don't do that. Now you're going to give
Yeah,
you
Dan.
know ammunition to come after you, call you a duck if you don't sign that contract. But yeah, go ahead, Ahmed. Ahmed.
Yeah, Dan. Look, you know I don't really like what Yeah, could you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah,
Could you hear me?
yeah, I can hear
All
you.
right, yeah. You know I don't like Fury's and I don't like Fury's antics. I gotta go in a minute or two because my
Yeah,
phone's gonna die. But I don't
yeah,
like Fury's antics recently. But AJ needs to speak up for himself, man. You can't be going on
yeah,
holidays and traveling here and there to Milan, whatever, and then Eddie Hearn's doing all these interviews. Joe Jordan made a good point. I don't think this fight's gonna happen, but he even said the main thing is the network deal, whatever,
yeah,
because of the zone and BT. But don't come out, whether it's 258, Matchroom, whatever, say he's agreed the deal, and now there's a problem with the contract. Both sides are just starting to piss me off. This happened with AJ Wilder. It's always Eddie Hearn. And Eddie
yeah,
Hearn, I don't know how people defend this guy religiously. He's always in the middle. Fury's full of shit. We all know that.
yeah,
But at this point in time, if the fight doesn't happen, I just hope Fury fights someone better than a guy like Manuel Cha. I'd be happy with the AJ fight, but I want Fury to try and fight Usyk or if it's Joyce, whoever, the winner
yeah,
of that fight, because it looks like that fight's going to be cold.
yeah,
But don't don't come out and start posting that you've agreed to all the terms, you've called this bluff, and then you haven't signed the contract. I
yeah. I know, I
know,
agree. Yeah,
I know it's only been a week, and I keep seeing. Look, I keep seeing two sides to the story, but the contract has been sent, and Eddie Hearn said this about a week ago. So I don't know how long it takes to look at a contract. I know it's a bit more complicated. I'm not trying to take Fury's side on this, but to me, it's just putting all this out in the media and then saying we've agreed to everything. I don't know if you've agreed to things and you're not signing the contract. That just contradicts your whole point. Like
I
either
agree.
you
Yeah,
agree to it or you don't agree to it. Like there's no middle ground on that. Like you can't say we've agreed to everything and now they won't sign it. Fury is just getting annoying. I think it's better if he retires or just gets the undisputed fighter walks away because this whole thing is just annoying. Like guys like Joyce, Parker, these guys are putting it all on the line. They're fighting each other and like guys like Joyce, I think deserves a title shot. I would rather see Joyce fight Usyk next if Fury's gonna mess around. I know Usyk said he wants to go around the Wilder route, but I would rather some of these top guys just fight each other because what Fury and now what Eddie Hearn's doing, it's just they're holding up the division and it's
right.
getting annoying for me. That's all I gotta say regarding that.
Right, right. I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. And yeah, like I said, though, I think it was all a smokescreen from the beginning. But again, Anthony Joshua, you call the man's bluff, rightfully thing to do. But don't say that you accept all his terms and then turn around and complain about the contract and not sign it.
I don't
That
know if
right
it's
there, yeah.
I don't know if it's Anthony Joshua or Eddie Hearn because
Or
AJ
Eddie
just
Hearn. Well,
AJ
either
just
one.
does not speak for himself, which
Yeah,
is not a good look. Sorry, yeah,
yeah,
sorry, I was just saying.
that's a good point. And I know some people are going to say, well, Fury's ducking because they set the wrong contract. It's like, well, that's not the point. The point is that they set the contract, they had it for days, matter of days. Now they're going to complain that they didn't like how it's all over the place. They initially said that everything was good to go. They
Yeah,
initially
but
said that.
it's
Yeah,
always this like with Wilder, the 50 million, 24-hour deadline. Like,
yeah,
how many days does this guy and his team need the contract? Like, look, I see a pattern with the Usyk fight that took forever to get finalized. The rematch as well. I don't know what these guys are playing now. I don't think it's AJ because I like AJ and I think AJ has got some guys in the background, whether it's Matchroom, Eddie Hearn. Some of these guys are just not doing the right thing for him or doing the right business deal because
yeah,
he accepted the deal as soon as he could. Eddie Hearn said that he told AJ the things I don't like in the contract. AJ told Eddie Hearn, this is from Eddie Hearn's mouth. He said, "Don't worry, I want the fight now because the Fury fight may never happen." So Eddie Hearn, I think, needs to be called out. Look,
yeah.
I'll say one last thing, and I gotta jump off then, and I'll let you close up. But
All
there
right, buddy.
was the back and forth with the Pascal fight, the Joshua Boatsy fight. He lost the first bid, he called it off.
Yeah,
Boatsy's, I think one of his managers or something, no, but Pascal, sorry, his manager posted, and then Lou DeBella as well. They enrolled or agreed to be
line of
enrolled
testing.
in VADA. And Eddie
Yeah,
Hearn started lying and said, did they agree, all this? But they pulled out the fight. Then this thing with the pay-per-view numbers, he started saying Dan Rafael's a liar. He would have released his number, the number he was saying that contradicted Rafael's number. He started going on about the worldwide figures. Eddie Hearn is not doing himself any favors, and people always keep going to LB and PBC. Those guys may be just as bad. It doesn't.
Yeah,
Two wrongs don't make a right. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, this,
yeah,
there's something holding up this heavyweight division, and I think there's only one guy or one person that keeps putting in one-sided rematch clauses, stolen fights, coming in the middle. I think Fury's full of shit as well, but
yeah,
I see more of a pattern with one guy, and that's Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, because
yeah,
they could have made the Wilder fight. They could have made the Usyk rematch quicker. They could have made the first Usyk fight a bit quicker. I know Fury and Aram and Top Rank took the world for a ride with the whole undisputed thing last year, but
yeah.
Eddie Hearn is no saint, man. And some people, I think, need to realize that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. That now, and Classic says like, look, Charlie himself posted not too long ago that he was going to fight Tyson Fury next. It's obvious to me that they planned this. They already had this plan. This is way before this contract nonsense. Yeah, I agree too. I've said this myself, Classic. But the thing is too is that my point, and me and Hamed is saying that, well, if Tyson Fury is going to call out Anthony Joshua, which we felt that was bizarre, especially he's coming off back-to-back losses and lost 3 of his last 5 fights.
Yeah, I
We
agree
felt
with that.
that was itself is bizarre. But yet Anthony Joshua comes out and said I'm be ready in December. These are Joshua's words. We're not making it up. He said it himself. And then they come back and say, we agree to your December 3rd date. We agree to all your terms. Send the contract. Contract gets sent. They said everything seemed good to go. And now they're coming out saying that there's a problem. This is
Yeah,
where,
look, Dan,
yeah,
this is the problem. Sorry, I
yeah.
have. And
Go
this
ahead.
is, sorry to cut you off, but
It's
this is
okay.
what I was going back with BFTV and those LDBC guys when the
Yeah,
Wilder AJ thing happened. I
yeah,
still think Wilder ducked that fight or delayed it. He's more to blame. But
yeah.
this whole thing with agreeing to a contract, then the contract being said, it just gets so muddled up. And at the end of the point, people lose interest or don't know, it can't differentiate what's going on, because
Yeah,
this all shouldn't be in the media. These negotiations should be settled behind doors. Like you said, one last thing
yeah,
regarding this. If you agree to the contract or agree to the terms, whatever, then say you've agreed only to the terms and we still need to, like, you're putting it out there as if you agreed to the terms and what's going to be in the contract. Like, I know it's
right.
not exactly the same thing, but then don't agree to the terms. It's simple. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Don't do that. And that's why, again, if people are going to say, if this once this whole thing falls over, and I think it falls through, which we all believe it will, I don't, I I wouldn't be surprised. And I don't blame people going to say, Tyson Fury fans are going to say, well, Joshua ducked the fight when he initially said they'd agree to the terms, and then he didn't want to sign the contract. They're gonna say that, and I don't blame him for saying that, because you're the one who actually said publicly. Well, not you, Joshua, but Hearn, that is.
your
That
team, yeah.
Yeah, your team said that we don't like the contract and we're not going to sign it. That's exactly what they said, man. And this is why, to me, again, I think this is all a smokescreen all along. But dude, don't call somebody out bluff, and then you're going to turn around and agree to all the terms and then say I'm not going to sign this contract. Don't do that. So yeah, I mean that's all I have to say about that, man. Ain't
Yeah,
nothing
yeah,
more, nothing
yeah.
more to be
No,
said.
no, I
Let's be
agree.
real. Yeah, realistically, Joshua does not need to be fighting world level right now, because his confidence is mentally shot. So he needs to take some, confidence building fights. Julie Shang, okay, he beat him before in the in the
My God,
yeah, he beat him in the amateurs in the Olympics. Okay,
that's a
fine,
tough sell.
tough sell, but they're gonna go
On
to
pay per view,
China.
I'm talking about. Not in China. In China, they'll probably get a billion people to watch that.
Yeah,
But I'm just saying, in the UK and America, I don't think many people. But one last thing I wanted to say, I
yeah,
agreed with everything you're saying. If this team doesn't want the fight now and it's too early, just say that. I know this is the zone's first big fight, whatever, with AJ in the UK. Just say that. They're not going to put him on with Fury. I think Fury's full of shit as well. And that
yeah,
guy's annoying. But he said he called him out. AJ responded in 24 hours. Why call the guy's bluff or the team's bluff? Agree to terms and that without the contract. Like, this whole thing goes
yeah,
back to the whole 50 million. I thought that was a bit of a smokescreen.
yeah,
But AJ or his team, I can't remember, they agreed to the terms. They said they agreed, but then there was arguments over the contract, and Shelley Finkel or whatever, Wilder only sent the email. My point is this. I think you've got to blame both sides. I know the Matchroom and the guys that don't like Fury, they're going to blame Fury. But at the same time, some point on the other, you've got to be a bit objective and kind of
yeah,
call out Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, because this all does not look good for them. Like
Yeah,
you're not signing the contract. If you're saying you agreed to it, then
yeah,
surely you gotta put out why you're not signing the contract. Like, do you not want the fight, or is this something you don't like? Like, that's my only thing on that. But I'll let you go, and I'll speak to you soon. And I gotta go. My phone's gonna die. All right. Good
all right,
speaking.
man. Hey, appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on, man. I really do.
All right. No
All right,
worries.
all right, peace. All right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Definitely great discussion tonight. Like I said, though, I'm gonna have to cover the other, the Matchroom card. I'm gonna have to watch those fights and give my analysis for tomorrow's live stream. But I forgot to mention one other fight on the undercard of Joyce versus Parker. I mean, the Manny Serrano versus Mahmoud fight definitely wasn't a good fight. It was, look, Amanda Serrano definitely dominated that fight. I would probably gave Mahmoud maybe one round at best. But it is what it is. Styles make fights. Mahmoud was a bit awkward, and she just wouldn't stand still for Serrano to hit her because Mahmoud wasn't a sitting target. So that's probably why the fight came out to be it turned out to be as dull as it was. But Serrano won. She is the unified featherweight champion. She's got what three belts out of the four, so she is the lineal champion there. But other than that, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and shut this down. Shout out to Classic. Thanks for coming on, man. Thanks, man. Have a nice week. It's too damn late and decided upon. Yeah, I know, man. You guys gotta have to catch some rest, man, and wake up earlier. So yeah. Mala said that Parker said he wants to fight again before the end of the year. Nah. Nah, he took a bad beating, man. Nah, it'll be wise not for him to fight, take another fight at the end of this year. No way. That's not gonna happen. If he is gonna fight again, definitely gonna have to take at least several months off, man, because that was a bad knockout and that was a bad methodical beating that he took from the first round on to the 11th before he got knocked out. So I mean, suffered a bad cut above his right eye, whole brutal body shots, suffered a closed left eye. Yeah, I mean, it's very, it's very, striking, jarring to me that he actually showed up for the post fight interview at the press conference. I give Joseph credit for that, but he should have been taken to the hospital immediately. But it is what it is. It's his choice to go out and do the post fight interview. That's his decision. But obviously, he should be in the hospital right now. He'll probably be in there for at least for a few days. Yeah, as soon as he goes to those, goes through several scans and pass some, some medicals, whatnot. But he should be on a medical suspension for at least about 6 months. That's my opinion. Yeah. Classic says after KL, they won't allow him to fight in the ring for a few months. Yeah, I'm not sure about the UK's protocol when it comes to that, but I know how here in the United States, particularly in the state of Nevada, if you suffer a bad knockout loss like Deontay Wilder did against Tyson Fury in the third fight, they put you on a medical suspension for at least 6 months. So I think the UK, I'm not sure. Maybe it is the same duration. Maybe it's a little bit less. But yeah, anyhow, yeah, he's not going to be back in the ring by the remainder of the year. No way. I think give him at least 6 to 8 months. Maybe he'll come back. But yeah, that's a horrible beating. And I wouldn't surprise me if that it wouldn't surprise me or shouldn't shock anyone that fight will change him mentally. Because that beating can really change a fighter's mental standpoint and a physical standpoint. So yeah. Yeah. Okay, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Shout out to Mala. Thanks for coming in. Hamed. Classic. Who else we have? The Brotherhood. Oh, what did I do? What did I do there? What did I do? Okay, there we go. The Brotherhood, MG, Jala. Who else did I missed here? Um, yeah, I think that's all I have. So, yeah, so other than that, I'm gonna go ahead and close this down. Oh yeah, Tony Reviews, DGO. They all came in momentarily. So yeah, so okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. So I'll be back on tomorrow to cover the Matchroom card to give my analysis on that. Other than that, I'm out. Peace.